Exclusive new data providing key insights into the state of China's economy. Joining us now, China Beige Book CEO Leland Miller. Let's just run down the list of things that where you're seeing clear evidence of maybe some slowdowns. Leland, how many things can you point to? Would you say right now? Are there a half dozen?
I mean, at least the whole month looked poor, and this is a bit surprising because the May data, our May data, official May data, looked very good. And of course, this was coming off the reduction in tariffs from the sky-high rates. There were some consumer trade-in programs that juiced growth a little bit in May. But there was an expectation, I think, broadly in markets that the data would continue to be okay. We did not see that. We saw a fall off in just about everything: broad growth, manufacturing, consumption, bank borrowing. Just about everything looked worse than the month before. So this is a little bit of a concern in terms of the state of the economy. The flip side of this, of course, is that Beijing looks less worried than they were before, and therefore stepped in less than they thought that they may have needed to otherwise in order to avoid some sort of worse downside scenario.
What would you attribute that to?
Well, our understanding is that Beijing feels very good about where it is in the trade war and what kind of leverage it has in terms of discussions with the United States. So if they were truly worried, if rates were still at some astronomical level and they thought that the economy was about to hit fall off a cliff, then they would have stepped in more significantly. That doesn't mean they're not easing rates. They are. It doesn't mean that we haven't seen a pickup in fiscal stimulus, fiscal activity. We have. It just means that there isn't the same level of concern that there was a couple of months ago in terms of being one of these extreme downside scenarios that they really had to step in more aggressively for.
Leland, are you saying that they're less concerned because they think that they can make a deal with the United States, or less concerned, what we've pointed out all along, he's not worried about getting reelected. He's not worrying about whether there's some inflation for his people or whatever cause or a slowdown. And he doesn't have to worry, President Xi doesn't have to worry like a Western democracy has to worry about the well-being of its citizens.
Yeah, well, much more the latter, but I think the broader point is that they can take a lot more pain. In the United States, you see a couple of bad inflation prints, you see a couple of IP prints, and everyone freaks out. And China, they're able to take that pain. She is redirecting, the country to eat bitter. And so I think that as long as they think that they are not under the gun in the trade negotiations, then they feel okay. So right now, I think they feel relatively good in terms of their leverage. The rare earth, magnets are only slowly getting back up to speed, but they have slowed export controls in order to show they have leverage against the United States on their export controls. So I think China feels like it has it put up a good front on the trade war, and as a result, it doesn't have to be as aggressive immediately on the economy.
They're probably happy that the strait's going to stay open, theoretically, I guess, right?
I would think they're very happy about that. I think the entire reason there was an announcement that had to do with China was to keep China on the sidelines, because oil, of course, is the main national security issue they're worried about.
Is anything true about this statement that we're well on our way? An Chinese official said this on Wednesday at a World Economic Forum meeting. We're well on our way of transforming into a mega-sized consumer powerhouse on top of our solid foundation as a manufacturing power. I guess that's on the that you would, if you were trying to sell the benefits of China, you would say that, but it's mixed at this point how far along they are in the consumer powerhouse, and a lot of the manufacturing power is not necessarily making things that there's a market for all the time.
Yeah, I think you're actually being a little bit generous. I do see it as a manufacturing powerhouse, but the consumption claims are just hot nonsense. If you look at what's actually happening on the ground, the real reason there are trade frictions in this world are not because of President Trump, or mostly not because of President Trump or other countries that are pushing back on China. It's the fact that China has years and years and years of weak domestic demand, which means weak imports, and yet they're exporting more. Now, They do have a manufacturing engine that has been getting more and more powerful over the years. But the problem is the consumption culture is weak, has been weak, and will be weak.
Leland, you just started to say dumping and then maybe changed your mind. Is that those have been the accusations that they're dumping everything on the global markets?
Well, they absolutely have. I mean, you can look at the data. You could look at some of the research that we've done through the U.S. China Commission, which is one of my other hats. We've done a lot of looks at the overcapacity situation. I don't think that there's that much of a question about what's happening. You can question whether their intentions are strategic or unintentional, but a byproduct of their economic model is definitely to juice the supply side. It creates downward price pressure. The domestic market is then saturated. They have no choice but to export products abroad. Sometimes that's done in order to put, a strategic leverage on an adversary like the United States and critical minerals. Sometimes it may be a byproduct of the fact that they've got, enormous overcapacity back home, for instance, in cars, internal combustion as well as EVs. But there's no question that the economic model, because of the fact there's such weak domestic consumption back home and the fact that there's so much supply side support, is just funneling overcapacity to the world right now.